Hey guys, it's Amber. Today is all about floral borders, frames, and centerpieces. I have watercolor, Copic coloring, a no-color card design, and I also have a mind-blowing stamp masking technique to share with you today. This video is part of the Tonic Studios Happy Hibiscus blog hop. There's a $50 gift card up for grabs. Details are down below, and while you're there, go ahead and like and subscribe. This is Happy Hibiscus from Tonic Studios. This is part of their stamp club. It's not a subscription-based program. It's just released the last Friday of every month. What's unique about this set is the way that the dies work. So you have an A2 size background stamp as well as two more individual floral arrangements. And the way that the die system works is you can actually cut out parts of the background. So you get a lot more use out of your stamp set this way because you can create a floral centerpiece or a floral frame. You can also create borders. So the two small dies that go with the small individual stamps there, those actually cut the bottom edge of it. So you could create a centerpiece with that, with maybe a sentiment in the middle, which would also be really striking. So it's just a really versatile set. Plus you get those little stacking dies there as well. So I wanted to watercolor this panel, and I am stamping this in Obsidian pigment ink on Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. So I can't watercolor on that, and I can't Copic color on it because it's a pigment ink. I totally used the wrong ink. But I will come back to this panel later and use this for the no color card. So I'm going to set this aside to dry. This does give you a good opportunity to see the whole panel. So for the next card, I've cut a couple masks here. So I have a piece of A2 size watercolor paper. It's Saunders Waterford High White Cold Press paper. And I thought I cut one of these with the blade toward the masking paper and one with the blade towards the release paper, but I actually cut them both the same way. So I'll go back to the die cutting machine, and here you can see me try to fit this onto my stamp. I decided the easiest thing to do, because I just want the floral frame for this card, is put my mask directly on the stamp. So I went and cut another piece, and again, your die cutting blade needs to be towards the release paper. I'm just going to peel that off so I have the masking paper here, and I'm just going to stick it directly on the stamp. Again, this means that I don't have to line anything up or get anything just perfectly centered. You know, if I were to put it on the card, then I'd have to try and figure out how that's going to fit and get the stamp lined up perfectly. That seemed really hard to do. I thought this would be the best thing to do. Now, this is a really unique stamp set. As I talked about, it's a really cool design between the stamp and the coordinating dies that you can do this. But you can also do this with any of your other background stamps. You know, just I'm going to stamp this in Obsidian pigment ink because I want a watercolor. And I'm just going to ink up right over that masking paper. But you could grab any of your other background stamps and grab like your circle stacking dies or rectangles or any other type of shape and do a similar technique with this. It doesn't just have to be this particular stamp and die. This gives you a really unique look because you're going to get complete foliage all the way around the way that this stamp is designed. So just peel that off with your tweezers. One of the advantages of doing it this way is that you don't have to peel the inked up masking paper off of your cardstock, which means you have much less chance of smearing. So I really like that as an advantage of masking your stamp versus your cardstock. And then again, that other huge advantage is that you don't have to figure out where to put your masking paper on the cardstock. You can figure that out exactly and pinpoint right where you want it on the stamp, which is a big advantage. So I do this all the time with my sentiment stamps. I'd never thought to do it with my background stamp. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you've done before. Maybe I'm just late to the party and everybody's already doing this, but I was really excited. So now I'm ready to watercolor, and so I've recently been doing some watercolor mixing studies. This is my phthalo turquoise. I do have this filmed, you guys, how I did this process. I just need to edit the video and voiceover, and I have a bunch of other deadlines to get through first before I can get to my own stuff. So, but look for this in the next few weeks. I'm hoping to post this soon. So be sure to subscribe down below if you don't want to miss that video. It's going to be a 3-part video series. So all of the colors in my mixing pan that you see here are mixed with a base color of phthalo turquoise. So basically I took all of the colors that you see in my mini palette of Daniel Smith watercolors over there, and I mixed all of them with phthalo turquoise to do that swatch book. These seemed like great colors for this card, so I'm going to use a bunch of the greens and the turquoise for all of this foliage, and then I'll break out and make some pinks with quinacridone rose also. So I'm going to show you one of each of the different types of leaves so that you have an idea of how I've painted them and what the colors are. I went ahead and labeled the palette itself. You guys can see that up there, and you can see where I'm taking the color from. I felt like it would be really distracting to just have labels popping up every few seconds as I change colors. So hopefully you find that helpful. But I'm trying to get a mix of different greens. So I'm doing some really bright, vibrant kind of grassy greens, as well as some teals to kind of mix things up so that you can add some depth to this floral frame. As far as my technique goes with the painting, I have a number 8 round brush, and I'm taking the first color directly to the paper with a wet to dry technique. So the paper is dry, my paintbrush is wet with the pigment. I go ahead and put that first layer on, and then I drop in a second color. Now that second color then becomes a wet on wet technique, and you see those colors start to blend together. I then let both of those layers dry, and after they're dry, I'll kind of reassess the whole frame and how it's looking, and I'll come back in and add shadows with a darker color or darker pigment. So kind of the key points when you have like a large floral arrangement like this is making sure that you have depth. So you don't want all of the different leaf elements to be the same tone of green. You need different shades of green, different tones of green, the teals, the bright greens, the dark greens. And then you need to make sure that you have that shadow to create the depth. So you can see with these leaves here, because it's underneath the Monstera leaf, I want those to be much darker, not necessarily the stem, but those parts that where there should be a casted shadow, those definitely need to be darker. Otherwise, your whole piece is just going to look flat. So the key to really getting that depth and dimension is the contrast. You've got to be able to add contrast. And that's where I tell people you can't be afraid of dark colors, especially like with Copic colors. I think a lot of people are afraid of the really dark Copic colors. And it's that contrast that makes a piece, in my opinion. Otherwise, like I said, things just look kind of flat. So here I'm just adding some shadows to some of these leaves, and we'll move on to the pinks and the flowers. So this is just my Zentangle journal or swatch book here, but here is the quinacridone rose study going on here. So I'm just going through here and picking out what colors I want to use on the flowers. I think my next color that I swatch is going to have to be Naples yellow, because so far I've done 5 of these studies, I think. In every single one of them, I love the whatever is mixed with Naples yellow, I absolutely love. So here I'm mixing yellow ochre and quinacridone rose, Naples yellow and quinacridone rose, and I'm varying the amount of quinacridone rose that I add to these. So to the Naples yellow, I barely added any, and with the Hansa yellow and quinacridone rose and the yellow ochre, I added a lot. I wanted those to be more red, and I wanted the Naples mixture to stay a little more yellow because I wanted to have a variance in colors in these hibiscus. There are beautiful colors of hibiscus. You could do bright orange. The bright yellow is really beautiful. I opted for a red and yellow mix because we have so much green foliage here. I always feel like red flowers or pink flowers are the complement to green, and they just go so well. So I love to use complementary colors whenever I can. For these little buds, I'm going to use Naples yellow just straight out of the pan. Naples yellow it's a gorgeous color. It's one of my faves. It's almost like a neutral yellow. It's not on the super cool side. It's not on the super warm side. It's like the Goldilocks of yellows, in my opinion. Now, if you like super transparent watercolors, then you may not love Naples yellow because it is a little bit opaque, but that hasn't caused any issues for me. To me, it's a beautiful color. So for the plumeria, I've added Naples yellow as my base color, and then I'm dropping in the quinacridone rose and just letting that spread all on its own. I'm leaving the spines of those, or the fold in the petals, completely white. I wanted to have a bright highlight there to separate the flowers. Here I'm just deepening up the shadows in the hibiscus, the centers of the hibiscus a little bit. And I wanted to leave those plumeria edges white so that there would be good separation, and I'm going to add some gold to this card. So of course all my cards need to have splatter. I'm just using the paints that I've already used, and I have my 8 round here. If you want larger splatter, then use a 12 or 10 round for larger splatter. If you're having a hard time with your splatter, wet your brush with water more and then pick up your pigment, and you should be more successful. Here I have the Nuvo glue pen, and I've die cut one of the sentiments from the coordinating die set from black cardstock. I'm just going to add a bit of adhesive on the back of this and get this adhered to the card. And I didn't stack these at all. This is just one die cut. I typically die cut from 110 pound black cardstock or 165 pound. Nina has 165 pound cardstock and Epic Black. That's great for your die cuts too because it's super thick. Here I have a Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen, and this is Midas Touch. So I was just getting the liquid moving. This thing is amazing, you guys. The amount of glitter in this thing, you can see it on my scrap of cardstock over there, is just stunning. So I decided to cover the sentiment with it. I mean, it was really hard for me not to cover everything with it. I basically did all of the yellow things, and then I added splatter, and then also did the sentiment. But yeah, it was hard for me not to cover the whole card in this. It's just gorgeous. So I use this on the Clean and Simple focal point card as well. So let's check out the shimmer. Look at that. It's gorgeous. I love it, you guys. It's just so pretty. So here's the still shot, and you can see the glitter just doesn't even show up as much as it did in the video. Also a glimpse of the Clean and Simple card we're doing next. So I went ahead and stamped the heart with the Obsidian, actually no, with Copic Safe ink, and I'm going to Copic color this little heart-shaped floral arrangement. Is this the cutest thing ever? So this is going to be a centerpiece on our Clean and Simple card. So I have the Copic colors listed up at the top of the screen. You can definitely slow this down if you like, but I did really simple coloring. I really didn't even do too much flicking because there's just not a lot of room to flick. I more kind of just mashed and scribbled more than anything else, to be honest. The only thing that I did that was kind of different is I put down the teal. So I kind of went with the same color scheme as I did for the watercolor piece. But once I put the teal down, I decided it looked really out of place in such a small centerpiece element. So I covered it all up with the YG23. So that made it lean more towards the grass green, but it still has those blue undertones. So it looks a little bit different than the other leaf. So I don't know. You can decide. You can decide if that's something that you would want to do, or just go with the greens. For the hibiscus, I started off with a yellow base and then added some orange and some reds to that. And here I wasn't sure if that was a leaf or not, which is why I left it to the end and decided, yeah, it needed to be a leaf. We had to fill that in. Isn't that super cute? I love it. And it's so quick. Look at how many markers I used, you guys. This is ridiculous. That's totally unnecessary for a stamp that size. So I'm going to grab the coordinating die and I'll get that run through my die cut machine. And then I'll work on a background. I really should have done that first. And in fact, I thought that I did, I think, when I was writing my blog. I don't know. But I have the CZ Design Simple Patterns Trio here. These stencils are awesome because they're A2 size. So you literally just match it up with your cardstock and tape it down and you're good to go. And then I have the Nuvo Russian White Crackle Mousse. I've never used this before, and it's brand new, so it's nice and soft and everything. I understand that you're supposed to keep the foil on there. That keeps it moist a little bit longer, I think is what I've learned. And so I have one of the Nuvo palette knives here, or palette spatulas, and I'm just going to spread this on. So I want to have a sentiment strip in the last bar of this stencil, so I'm not going to bring this all the way down. I'm going to kind of leave a messy edge at the bottom and then use that last space for my sentiment. Because otherwise, I feel like if I had put the sentiment underneath all of the bars, it would have thrown off the eye. The white space wouldn't have been the same at the top and the bottom. So that's why I picked these stripes over like the dots or the diagonals, so that I could fit the sentiment in there. And the color of this is really pretty. It's almost like an oyster color. Super pretty, a little pearlized. And here we have it's already dried. I picked a sentiment from the set and just went ahead and stamped that. And look how it crackles after it dries. So cool. And of course I added Midas touch to all the yellow parts on this stamp as well. I just think that crackle is really cool. I'd never used it before, but I really do like it. Here's the no color card, and I started to edit this part of the film and it seemed so silly to put it in because I literally cut a strip of that original panel that I stamped. I tore a piece of scrap cardstock and I tore a piece of the Altenew mini dots washi tape. And I just glued them down and added a sentiment. More than anything, it felt like a glue ad, which I really didn't like, so that's why I edited it out. So this is a card with a floral border that you can mass produce like crazy and just really quickly. Here's one more look at the floral frame and the centerpiece, and of course we had the border. If you enjoyed this video today, show your appreciation by subscribing and liking down below, and be sure to follow the blog link to enter the giveaway. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration.